Thank you all for your attention in this transmission. We all are speaking with you together as a synchronistic collective, all observing you, all listening to you psychically at this moment in time, space. From all across this multiverse, we are tuning our dials to your unique particular wavelengths so that we can better understand each of your individual journeys and get an understanding for you collectively, so that way we can be of greater service and assistance to you. Now, we want to remind each of you that right now you are all part of a cycle. And we know you're all familiar with the idea of universal cycles, karmic cycles, life cycles. But you're also a part of your own self-created cycles. And this exists collectively, and it also exists individually. And what is an individual cycle? Well, this is similar to a karmic cycle, where in your own personal cycle, you may have moments of the cycle you would consider high moments, where you are having high amounts of realization, you are understanding more about yourself and your community and your life path, and then inevitably you will have a low within that cycle, where you are faced with your shadow. And the idea here is that in these peaks, you are able to see more of yourself and you expand more, and a side effect of that is you begin to perceive more of your shadow and darkness that needs to be transformed, and oftentimes you'll see the shadow and darkness of your world that needs to be transformed. However, many people, because of belief system, will see that shadow that is revealed from the expansion and will judge it negatively and will say, oh, I am actually doing something wrong. So this is a bad thing that's happening. And they're either judging themselves or the situation. This then perpetuates the negative experience and will actually cause it to drag on. And this is a self-perpetuated cycle, because you're always cycling, you're always expanding, and that expansion is happening with cosmic downloads and earth downloads coming from both above and below, as well as from future and past realities and spirit realities. All these factors will come in to help elevate you so you can go through your evolution. This is a synchronistic part of the cycle. Where people oftentimes fall out of the synchronicity is when that shadow is then revealed as a side effect from that expansion. And they say, oh, I've done something wrong, or I need to spiritually bypass this, or I need to ignore it or repress it, whatever their mechanism is, and they actually fall out of the synchronicity, and they perpetuate that shadow. And what will happen is they will then perpetuate the shadow to a point where they will not be able to receive those higher downloads because they have not completed that next chapter of transformation for themselves. So what ends up happening is they perpetuate self-created cycles of darkness instead of the natural synchronistic cycle that contains both light and dark and neutral. Neutral being the ability to observe neutrally and integrate both light and dark. But what happens is people fall out of that. They fall out of the god-goddess position of being a master manifester. And then they allow for that negative cycle to become self-perpetuated. And they spiral. And this is something that is a self-created cycle. Now, we're going to now extend this into collective self-perpetuated cycles and collectively perpetuated ones. When enough people do that and collectively view things as negative and as something that is a mistake, not part of divine mystery's plan, they are perpetuating collective negative cycling. When in reality, the only reason that this darkness is here is because at some point there was an elevation in consciousness that allowed for a greater point of view, and it revealed much of the darkness you're now dealing with today, collectively and individually. And the secret here is to begin to transform that and to honor it as a sacred reflection of what is going on inside of you in terms of your belief system. Because it is your individual and collective belief system that manifests your cycle experience. So what we want you to really understand here is that the power is completely in your hands. And the belief that other people have the ability to control what you manifest is that in of itself. It is just a belief that is self-perpetuated and perpetuates many of the collective cycles. Because you say, oh, this negative collective cycle is out of my hands, this is just the way the world is and there's nothing I can do about it, and then you're actually then feeding into it. But when you change that belief and say, the world around me is an extension of what's happening within me, you can then alter and change what's happening within you, and that will then by default begin to shift the collective reality experience tenfold. And this has a lot to do with you actually shifting your vibration so strongly that you experience a brand new version of reality, because the reality you experience is dependent upon your internal vibration. So how do you then begin to shift your internal vibration to get a different collective reality experience and different individual reality experience? Well, the first things you must do is the following. You must say to yourself, I am going to choose to improve my life and improve who I am at a core. And I'm also going to simultaneously embrace who I am, what I am, and where I am going. I own that. That is mine. And I have control over that. And I choose to control that. These are some of the decisions you must make inside of yourself. You must believe that that is true and that you can do those things, and then step into your power and affirm that. Dictate that to be true. Because if you don't believe those things, you're not going to be able to control your inner reality, because you will believe it is at the whim of what's happening around you, rather than what you determine as a cosmic entity. So, as you begin to affirm that to yourself, you must then pay attention to your thinking. You must pay attention to the repetitious cyclical thoughts that happen, because your society is riddled with negative thoughts. And this comes from your ancestors, largely, because these negative thoughts are a side effect of the wiring of your neurology. Remember, your neurology is not in your brain, just in your brain. It's throughout your whole body, and it's in your DNA as well. So your cyclical thought patterns come not just from how you've been wired, but it comes from your DNA, which then programs largely how you're wired, in a combination factor with your upbringing and belief systems. This wires your neurology. It causes your DNA to express itself in certain ways. So all of this influence that is affecting you in terms of how you think comes from the past. It comes from everything up until this point. And as soon as you start to affirm those things to yourself, you are now putting yourself into a position where you can then build new neural connections and form a new neurology. You can start to think differently, feel differently, and that does not just happen in the brain. Your nervous system is throughout your whole body, so that spreads throughout your entire body into all of your organs. All of these organs and cells all have their own magnetic electric fields and psychic auric fields. When you are changing your neurology, you are changing the amount of amplification of the electric frequency that you are generating. in your electromagnetic processes within your cells and tissues. That change electrically comes hand in hand with your inner psychic change, because it is the psychic field that influences the electric field. It's the electric fields that then begin to carve, like a sculptor and marble, begin to carve the physical reality experience and the experience of your body. But the change first takes place in your level of consciousness, and then this electrically affects you and your neurology and your electromagnetic frequencies and your fields, and then your reality begins to change from there. So what you must do is make that inner change, affirm those things, and begin to change your thoughts. Spend 10 minutes a day visualizing what it is you want in your life. Whether it's a new version of you that is happy, do that. And program that into your body. Scan your body, feel that feeling, and see that visualization in your lungs. And say, every time I breathe, I'm bringing that into my body. Put it into your brain and say, every time I use my brain, I'm bringing that into my body. Program this, put it into your spine and say, this is the message I send electrically to every cell, every organ in my body, because my spine is like the great composer of this orchestra, sending the signals left and right, up and down, in and out to every cell in the body. So begin to program yourself with these thoughts and visualizations of who you are, what you want, why you are here. Begin to believe this to be true. Say to yourself, I form this as a new belief system. Take whatever it is you're visualizing, whatever it is you're desiring, and form new beliefs that allow for you to have it. Say, I deserve this. I believe this is the reality I am creating. I allow for myself to create this at all moments. And you are naturally going to begin to expand. And you are then taking control of that cycling process. You're beginning to synchronistically birth a new expansion. You're triggering it. You're not waiting for life to give it to you. You're doing it. And that's very key to remember here. And like we said, you will then be faced with what? The shadow. You will be faced with the aspects of your subconscious and programming that are in resistance to what you're creating. And if you experience that, don't say, oh, this is a bad thing, and then run from it, because then you'll just fall back into that cycle of perpetuation. You must then stick with the positive vibrations, the positive beliefs and positive thoughts, and then go in and say, I am able to release this shadow and release these ancestral and societal conditioning programs. I can let go of this and go through your own self-created process of letting go of that, of healing that. You will find your behavior is interwoven with those processes of negativity. And you will find you will be faced with situations where you must then change your behavior in order to complete that manifestation process of manifesting whatever it is you want. So you will then be faced with your actions that are creating the negativity, and you will then be in a position, because of your expansion and your choice to be a conscious co-creator, to then say to yourself, I don't have to respond that way, I don't have to act that way, I don't have to feel that way, I don't have to perpetuate this kind of tendency, I don't have to be in this relationship, I don't have to have this friendship, I don't have to treat myself this way, I don't have to judge myself this way. You then must throw a wrench in those mechanisms and choose then to respond differently. And as you do that, it's like you're on a bicycle and you're just pedaling and pedaling and pedaling, going uphill past resistances, and that starts to turn the gears for your manifestation process. And that is how you let go of non-synchronistic cycles. And when we say non-synchronistic, we just mean cycles that are not in harmony with the natural synchronicity of positivity that is around you at all times and is a signature match for who you are as a divine being. Because that has its own unique frequency that you tune into through your thoughts, beliefs, and how you live your life. And when you think, believe, and act in a way that is in harmony with who you are at your core, which is nothing but love, you then align with that positive, natural, synchronistic flow, and you then begin to perpetuate it. The key here for all of you is don't let your thinking take you away from this message. Because as soon as you stop hearing this, those thought patterns are going to come back. And you must then say to yourself, I am going to make a lasting change. Or you might hear this message and say, oh, that's not real. That's not how life works. But remember, that is just the ego taking new information and pushing it away because it identifies with the current cycle you're in and it wants to perpetuate it. So you must then have the neutrality and the awareness to detach from these automatic self-protection mechanisms and say, is there anything in this message I can use positively? Or can I use this message even when I'm going through the shadow aspect of my cycle? Can I use this message and remain above water and transmute what I am going through and learn from it as a master and not judge it, understanding that whatever I go through, however long it takes, no matter what comes up, that is all part of this divine plan. And that's the challenge for you. Can you remember this teaching in that moment? Because if you can transform it, and you can then reach your manifestational desires, no matter what they are, because you have the right to manifest whatever you want, because you exist, and existence is nothing but perpetual manifestation. So you have the right to manifest what you want as a divine co-creator here on earth. So you have the ability to honor that and give rise to that and to transmute the shadow to a point where you don't have sabotage mechanisms keeping you from manifesting the life you want, because that is your divine birthright. So claim it, own it, walk with it. It is your ability, your power. You can do this. No one else can do it for you. You can do this. So thank you for hearing this message. It has been our pleasure to be able to share it with you. You are all so beautiful. You are all so necessary. And you are all pieces in this wonderful puzzle of multidimensional existence. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy your ride.